You know that feeling when you are walking down a crowded street, or maybe you're just sitting on your couch, scrolling through your feed, and it suddenly hits you that the world is spinning faster than it was yesterday?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very real thing.
Right. You get this sinking, almost physical sensation in your chest that you are constantly struggling just to keep up. Like the speed limit of life is being aggressively raised every single day.
Yeah, and the fear is that if you stumble for even a second, you're going to be left behind entirely.
Hmm.
It is an incredibly pervasive anxiety right now.
Totally.
And, well, the default assumption we almost universally make is that human civilization is in a state of hyperacceleration.
Hmm.
We assume that someone, somewhere, is intentionally hitting the gas pedal because we are all just obsessed with moving faster.
Right. We assume it's an active choice, but what if we aren't actually accelerating at all?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah. What if we are looking at something much more profound, like a structural phase shift where civilization hasn't necessarily chosen to speed up, but has simply lost the ability to stop?
Exactly. That is the core premise we are mapping out today. We're looking at a state where the cost of stopping, the penalty for just pausing to take a breath, has become exponentially higher than the cost of keeping going.
Even if that motion is completely exhausting.
Precisely. Regardless of how exhausting it is, you just can't stop.
So to really get to the bottom of this, we're pulling from a couple of brilliant analytical frameworks today for this deep dive. Specifically, we're looking at the GOA-38 thesis.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
It really is. It's a recent sociological framework that models modern civilizational exhaustion. And we're pairing that with the LMOS observation models, which track economic and systemic flows.
Yeah, and what makes these frameworks so refreshing is that they completely strip away the usual blame game.
Right. They don't look at the world through the lens of, who is the villain or what is the dominant ideology. They just look at structures and gradients.
They are mapping a very calm, non-apocalyptic reality, which is simply that modern civilization is becoming mutually locked into continuous motion.
Like, are we moving fast because we want to or
Yeah.
because we literally can't hit the brakes?
Exactly. They treat society almost like a physics problem. We aren't predicting some cinematic explosive collapse, and we aren't pointing fingers at bad actors.
No.
We are simply observing how deeply interconnected systems, from global finance to urban infrastructure, now mutually constrain one another, to the point where hitting the brakes is just, well, structurally impossible.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand what these sources call a stop-cost civilization, we really need to look at how different things used to be.
Right. The historical context is crucial here.
Because historically, civilization functioned on an entirely reversed equation. Like 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, you needed to expend massive amounts of energy, capital, and labor just to expand.
Growth was the active state. You had to actively burn coal to make the train go.
Right. And when you stopped burning the coal, the train stopped.
Exactly. Stopping was the default. It was completely normal, and more importantly, it was practically free.
You would pause to rest.
Right.
Or retreat, or wait out a bad winter.
Yeah, or let a field lie fallow. The natural limits of daylight, geography, and just basic human stamina forced a pause. Stopping was a neutral or even a beneficial reset button.
But the GOA-38 framework argues that the reset button has essentially been dismantled. We've replaced those natural pauses with massive, deeply interwoven structures.
Think about artificial intelligence, globalized logistics networks, 247 financial markets.
Social media algorithms.
Yes, social media, national security grids. These systems act as overlapping operational systems, or OS layers. And the crucial shift is that they now lock each other into a state of permanent execution. The moment one node in that network tries to pause, the surrounding layers instantly penalize it.
It sounds like riding a bicycle on a tightrope.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, the moment you stop pedaling to rest your legs, you don't just get to pause and float there in midair. You lose your momentum, you lose your balance, and you fall.
That analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. You fall because the surrounding gravity doesn't care that your legs are tired. The GOA-38 thesis points to a new defining equation for our era.
Which is?
The loss from stopping now significantly exceeds the damage from continuation.
Wow. I want to really ground that equation in reality for you listening, because on the surface, it feels kind of absurd, right?
It does. It feels counterintuitive.
It feels like somebody, a CEO or a world leader, could just call a timeout. But let's look at the current AI investment race.
Oh, that is the perfect example.
You have massive tech companies pouring billions upon billions of dollars into building larger and larger data centers. The engineers are notoriously burned out.
Yeah, and the power grids in the cities hosting these servers are strained to the breaking point.
Exactly. And even the profitability of these massive language models is still, highly uncertain. Logically, the healthy thing to do would be to pause, figure out a sustainable business model, let the infrastructure catch up.
But the LMOS models show us exactly why they can't do that.
Right. What happens if they do?
If a tech giant hits pause, they don't just briefly delay their progress. The financial OS layer instantly devalues their stock.
Oh, of course.
The talent pool, the top engineers, they immediately migrate to the competitor who's still moving.
Because they want to be on the winning team.
Exactly. The algorithmic market punishes their lack of momentum, and within a few quarters, they essentially cease to exist as a market leader.
So the penalty for stopping is literally existential.
It is. And it's not just tech, by the way. The sources apply this to national security, too.
Oh, right. Like military spending.
Yeah, you have nations running crippling financial deficits, but they cannot stop military spending or automated arms development.
Because the global security OS dictates that hitting pause means losing your deterrence baseline.
Exactly. It's not necessarily driven by a desire for war or some evil ideology. It's driven by the mathematical impossibility of stepping off the treadmill without losing your balance on the global stage.
We see the exact same lock-in at the corporate level, too, with KPI optimization.
Oh, definitely. A company might have internal metrics showing its workforce is entirely fatigued, just running on fumes.
But the market operates in a 247 always-on state. The financial expectations demand quarter-over-quarter growth.
So the human biologic speed, which absolutely requires rest and recovery, is clashing directly with an algorithmic market speed that literally never sleeps.
That is the core friction right there. We are dealing with multiple OS layers running at completely incompatible speeds.
And because these systems force each other to stay in motion, the act of stopping instantly triggers a cascade of failures. Loss of market value, loss of competitiveness.
Or just a total loss of visibility.
Right.
But, okay, if you have this overarching system that absolutely must keep moving, even when the human beings and the physical resources inside it are experiencing that damage from continuation, that friction has to go somewhere, right?
It does. It can't just disappear.
Like if you run a car engine without oil, the heat builds up until the metal warps. Where does the wear and tear actually show up in our society?
That is perhaps the most counterintuitive and frankly insidious part of this phase shift. The friction doesn't destroy the high-speed layers.
Wait, it doesn't?
No. In fact, the inability to stop actually reinforces those high-speed systems in the short term. AI investment skyrockets, defense budgets inflate, data centers multiply, and supply chains get tighter. The top of the pyramid looks incredibly robust.
So the wear and tear isn't happening at the top at all?
Not at all. The friction, quietly, almost invisibly, grinds down what the GOA-38 framework calls the slow layer.
The slow layer. Okay, so this is essentially anything in human existence that requires a state of pause to function.
Exactly. We're talking about the capacity for deep sleep, the ability to patiently wait for a complex problem to resolve, localized community connections.
The maintenance of long-term relationships.
Yes, and crucially, the margin for providing care. Think about the act of caring for a newborn or nursing an aging parent.
You can't speedrun that.
No, you really can't. That process absolutely cannot be optimized. It happens at a biological, deeply human speed. It requires a massive reallocation of time away from the high-speed OS.
But because taking the time to care for someone means you have to disconnect from the high-speed layers, you incur that massive penalty we talked about.
Right. Sleep, waiting, care, these aren't just pleasant hobbies. They are the fundamental building blocks of human sanity.
And they are being eroded because they operate at a frequency the overarching system simply won't tolerate anymore.
Exactly. But to your earlier point about the car engine, when we look out the window, we don't see a smoking engine. The buildings are standing, the logistics networks are still delivering packages to our doorsteps. The stock market is trading.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because I have to push back here on behalf of you, the listener. If my power is on, my Wi-Fi is fast, and my social media feed is refreshing with new content every millisecond, how can we confidently say the system is eroding?
It's a fair question.
If the surface looks completely functional, why should we care about this invisible friction?
Well, the LMOS models address that exact paradox using a concept called speed and shear.
speed and shear, like in physics.
Yeah, think of it like two massive tectonic plates moving at different speeds beneath the Earth. The surface, the ground you walk on, the apps you use, the packages you receive might look completely solid.
Right, you don't see the tension building miles below.
Exactly. The tension is hidden by the sheer velocity of the surface. Because the market and technological layers are moving so fast, the literal tearing at the underlying social fabric is masked.
Oh, wow.
We are not facing a sudden cinematic collapse where the skyscrapers crumble. We are facing a quiet phase shift where we lose our reconnectability.
Reconnectability. Okay, let's really dig into what that means, because that feels like the crux of this entire deep dive.
It really is. Reconnectability is the ability to step away from the fatigue, step away from the institutions or the technology, and successfully plug back in later.
Right. Like historically, the structures of society held a space for you.
Yes, exactly. You could take a sabbatical, you could spend a year raising a child, or you could just disconnect from your local industry for a while.
And when you came back, the world hadn't fundamentally rewritten its operating system. You could just pick up where you left off.
But now, because the momentum of the stop-cost civilization is so fierce, if you step off the treadmill, the gap closes instantly. You become a legacy system overnight.
That's terrifying.
It is. You can't get back in without starting from the bottom or finding that your skills are entirely obsolete. So people and institutions stay on the treadmill even as they're actively burning out.
Because the fear of not being able to reconnect is perceived as far worse than the exhaustion of staying on.
Precisely.
That is deeply unsettling. But it begs the question, what is turning up the dial on this phenomenon right now? Obviously, the Industrial Revolution sped things up. The internet sped things up.
Yeah.
But the sources point to AI as a massive, unprecedented catalyst for this specific loss of brakes. And I want to be clear here, they aren't just talking about microchips getting faster at doing math.
No, raw computational speed is just the plumbing. What AI changes is our relationship with time and expectations. The texts explain that AI exponentially increases comparison frequency and expectation refresh cycles.
Let's explore that expectation refresh cycle because that's huge. Think about what it used to take to establish a best practice in any industry, say architecture or manufacturing.
It took years.
Decades, sometimes. It took trial and error, publishing physical papers, hosting international conferences, debating methodologies. The baseline of what was expected moved slowly enough that a human could master it, take a vacation, and come back to the same baseline.
Today, an AI model can ingest global data, simulate 1 million variations, optimize a process, and set a new, impossibly high baseline overnight.
And tomorrow, a slightly more advanced model sets an even higher baseline.
Right, and because AI processes and updates these expectations continuously, it creates massive, what the sources call, synchronization pressure.
Synchronization pressure.
Yeah, governments, corporations, supply chains, and regular people are forced to constantly sync themselves with this rapidly shifting baseline.
It's like your phone demanding an operating system update every 5 minutes. But the update drains your battery, and you can't make a call until it's done.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. And if you stop syncing even just to rest for a moment, you become incompatible.
Your company's logistics become too slow to compete.
Your nation's defense systems become vulnerable.
Your personal skill set is devalued.
Exactly. This brings up a psychological component from the GOA-38 framework that absolutely fascinated me, which is the concept of phase observation and how this structural lock leads to cognitive closure.
Cognitive closure. Okay, this is where we see the systemic friction actually altering human cognition.
Yes. In an era where algorithms can generate meaning, analysis, and explanations at light speed, the speed of explanation vastly outpaces our biological speed of digestion.
We are being force-fed answers much faster than we can actually chew them.
That's exactly it.
Think about a complex global event happening. Within 30 minutes, algorithms and AI have generated 10,000 takes, summarized them, grouped them into polarized camps, and fed you the binary conclusion.
You don't get 3 days to read, ponder, and form a nuanced opinion anymore?
No. Which leads directly to cognitive closure. Because we lack the time or the cognitive margin to actually process complexity, our brains just lock in.
We stop trying to truly understand the mechanics of the world. Instead, our perspectives become rigidly fixed. Everything becomes a stark binary.
Enemy or ally. Absolute fear or blind optimism.
Right. We lose our cognitive cooling time. When a high-performance engine runs hot, It physically requires time to cool down before it can operate safely again.
Yeah.
Human cognition is no different.
Yeah.
When we are bombarded by high-speed, synchronized data, our nervous systems heat up. We need that slow layer, the waiting, the silence, the pause, to cool down, to reevaluate our positions, and to tolerate nuance.
But the stop-cost civilization has eliminated the pause. The penalty for cooling down is irrelevance.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Why does a structural analysis of global OS layers matter on your commute or while you're walking your dog?
Well, it matters because this civilizational mutual lock isn't just happening at the United Nations or in the server farms of Silicon Valley or on the trading floors of Wall Street.
It is happening in your brain.
It is the exact structural mechanism at play when you feel entirely too exhausted to keep scrolling through your phone, but you are simultaneously too terrified of dropping out of the cultural loop to put it down.
You are literally feeling the shear. You are experiencing the friction between your biological need for the slow layer, your desperate need for cognitive cooling, and the synchronization pressure of the high-speed OS.
You are feeling the weight of the stop-cost equation in real time. The creeping realization that stopping feels like a luxury you can no longer afford.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we need to completely reframe the problem. If you've been feeling that anxiety, that sense of overwhelming, crushing speed in modern life, it's not just your imagination, and you aren't crazy.
Not at all.
But the anxiety isn't about the speed limit being raised.
No, the anxiety comes from realizing the brake pedal has been removed entirely.
The brakes are gone, and that completely changes the questions we should be asking about our collective future.
It shifts the paradigm entirely. According to the frameworks we've discussed today, the ultimate question of our civilization is no longer what should we accelerate or how fast can we optimize this system.
Right, the defining variable of our survival isn't growth anymore.
No, the variable is reconnectability.
Reconnectability.
The real metric of a resilient society is whether it can answer this question. Can we return after we stop? If a system, whether that's a single person, a local community, or an entire nation, takes the necessary time to heal, to sleep, to care for its vulnerable, will the overarching structure allow them back in?
Or are they permanently discarded as incompatible?
Exactly.
We aren't here today to offer a definitive closed conclusion to that. Like the framework suggests, we want to resist that temptation for cognitive closure.
Yes, let's keep the cooling space open.
Exactly. We want to leave you with a space for cognitive cooling, a new lens to observe the world around you, not as a runaway train driven by malice, but as an interlocking system of structures and gradients that have simply forgotten how to pause.
It really changes how you view everything from global politics to your own daily fatigue.
It really does, and it leaves me with one final, deeply unsettling thought about where this all leads. If stopping is structurally impossible for the vast majority of systems and people, if the overarching OS penalizes anyone who tries to step off the tightrope, it makes you wonder about the future of inequality.
How so?
Well, will the ultimate luxury of the future, the ultimate status symbol reserved strictly for the ultra-wealthy, no longer be private jets or mansions, but simply the right to log off?
Wow.
Financial and structural immunity to actually hit the brakes while the rest of the world is forced to keep running. Think about that for a bit.
What kind of society still allows people and systems to stop and reconnect later?